Right, okay then, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's video. And today we're having a look at this perpetual white light of death machine. Now, this particular board has come to me from another source who have replaced an HDMI port because the port was particularly nasty. And they've done that, and they've replaced the encoder IC, but there's still an issue on the board and it still gives a white light of death. Now we've had a look at this and I've of course have done the usual, so I've checked the connections, soldered connections on the back of the port, and the soldered connections on the back of the port all look really rather nice, so they've done a good job of that. Let's see if I can get you a shot down there. I don't know if you can really see on this camera, to be honest with you. That's not bad. They've tried replacing a couple of these other caps and things around here, and some of these little ICs that sometimes go open. Those haven't changed the situation at all. The encoder IC, as I say, they've changed, and there's no problem there. I've checked for shorts on this circuit, and there are no shorts present. There are no shorts present on the back of the port, no shorts here. Everything looks to have been done to a decent standard, which is nice. The one thing that I did see was there was a missing cap just under here that had been ripped off. So I have replaced that, but there was still no change. So what I sometimes resort to in cases like this where we've no schematic and we have absolutely no sort of insider knowledge and working of these circuits at all, what I like to do is stick my multimeter in diode mode and compare those values against a known good working board. And what that will tell you is very quickly whether you have a problem. So what you can do is you can get a baseline reading from a good board and you will get a figure, let's call that figure X. And what you can sometimes find is when certain components are faulty, that figure will change. And if you log these down in a spreadsheet or a Word document or something like that, you can quickly build up a decent little portfolio of figures as to what they should read when they're good and what things read when they're bad, and what certain things read when certain other things are bad. So you can actually start to build up a picture of what part of a circuit might be at fault if, for instance, certain components is bad. And it's quite useful to give you a start of a 10 in situations where you're struggling to actually pick up what's wrong. So that's what I've been doing. So I've been comparing values on my multimeter to an known good board, and I have tested every single component in this HDMI circuit, and it all reads perfect. There is no problems there. So the IC is good, the port's good, the soldering jobs are good. The one missing cap there off the APU has been replaced, and there is no problem there. So what I need to look at is where data comes into this circuit. So it comes into the HDMI encoder IC via these 8 data lines here with some resistors, and the resistors all check out good, and they all read the same same value in diode mode as they do against a good board. But it got me thinking as to where these little bits and pieces go. So they go to vias just on the back sides of them, and they go up through the board. So if we have a look up through the top of the board, where those come out of, they actually come out just here, up these collection of vias here. And once I noticed that, and I started to look in the general area to see if I could get a bit of a clue as to see if anything in this vicinity looked burned or if any of them looked a bit nasty, I looked over here and noticed that there are a couple of components missing just above here, just by this where the heatsink screw actually clamps through the board. And there are, it looks like there are a couple of either tiny resistors or tiny little capacitors just here on this left hand side that are missing. So on the right hand side here, these are actually blank pads, or no stuff, as they're sometimes known on schematics. But these 2 little resistors have definitely got solder on them, and they've definitely had something there, and that is now missing. So I think what we need to do is find a donor board and see if we can find those same components on a donor board and see if indeed they are A, required, and B, if we can replace them. And indeed on this board here I have those components. It looks like a little resistor and an inductor, maybe something like that, because one is black in colour and one is sort of like that little ceramic browny colour. So let's see if we can replace these components on this board. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom you out. Now, and these are very, very tiny components, so I'm not entirely sure you are going to be able to see too much of this, to be fair. I will try and get you a zoom level which is useful, but it's being able to see both boards at once, I don't suppose, which could be the issue for you. So we're going to pick off these tiny resistors. Let's just see if I can get you a bit of a better view. Let's see if we can get the light source a bit higher to light both boards up. Yep. I don't think you can see me over here though, can you really? Can you? Oh, maybe you can. Just about. So let's go and let's get to replacing these. So my apologies if you can't see an awful lot. These are really, really tiny. Really tiny. So we're just going to get some fume extraction going. I'm just going to get a bit of flux. So this board, of course, is a perpetual white light of death. So does it stand to reason? Obviously these components are missing, but if these components are open circuit or are blown, perhaps these could be the reason why. So it's all good to know. So we're going to go and grab that inductor first of all. So that's the black component on the very left. So I say my apologies if you can't see an awful lot of this. They are very, very tiny. Very tiny, so much so I need to be careful if I don't lose them. Okay, that's one inductor on. These things are so tiny. If you lose them, they just go into the sixth dimension, never to be seen or heard of ever again. Just trying to go walkies. Naughty boy. Gonna get a drop more flux on there, I think. It's partially soldered, so it is in place on the back, but Okay. So those components are now changed over. And we'll see if you can see what I see. So we'll get rid of the donor board. And we'll see if we can get you some zoomage. There now. So those are the components there in the centre of the picture there. So just by this hole where the heatsink clamp goes through. So we've got this tiny little, what looks like an inductor, and then a little, either a capacitor or a little tiny resistor. I think it's probably a resistor onto this little inductor here, and then goes down through here. So those were definitely missing. Otherwise, this board seems to check out okay. There doesn't seem to be much in their way of problems. As I say, everything else seems to check out. The other place have done a relatively nice job of actually replacing everything, so it's nice to see somebody who knows what they're doing for a change. But I sent it up here for a second pair of eyes. And they are so small, these little things, that they are quite easily missed, especially if you don't know the circuit too well. I suppose once you're outside of actually replacing the usual suspects, you can sort of be left scratching your head. So those two components are replaced. So now what we can do is we can go away, we'll test it, and we'll see if it works. Hopefully it will, and hopefully this machine will be back in the land of the living, and we can move on. So let's go test it now, boys and girls, and let's see what we get. So we have the board assembled into my test chassis. Now my 1003A test chassis is looking a little bit sorry for itself, and the threads are stripped out of the heatsink clamps, which is rather annoying, so there's not a lot I can do about that. So I'm going to have to go put my finger on the heatsink clamp to keep it in position. But let's see now if we get any output. And the answer is yes, we do. So that's all good. Now, because this was sent up board only, and you know I don't have the hard drive or the disk drive, then I don't really want to do a firmware upgrade on it. But we do have output to the display now, which is more than we were getting before. So we're going to send this one back to the repair shop, and they can do the rest from there. But we're happy, we're good, we have output again. So thanks for watching, boys and girls, and I will see you on the next vid. Of course, we can't turn it off in safe mode, can we? So we're going to have to pull the power, which is rather annoying. You can see what I mean now by my test chassis being knackered, can't you? But yeah, that's it. So that can now go back to the repair shop, and they can do the rest from there. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you've learnt something there. And it just goes to prove that if you do have a perpetual white light of death, just check those two little components we've replaced there. Again, certainly if you can get the values against the good board, then yeah, it might very well be a problem if you're struggling after replacing an encoder IC and the port itself. So 2 more little things to check there. Like I say, if you do have any questions or you want the values against the good board, then you know, by all means hit me up and I'll see what I can do for you. But yeah, thanks for watching, boys and girls, and I will see you on the next vid.